This is Comic Shenanigans, episode 1094, Book of the Month Club, Thunderbolts 1 to 4.
Ain't no stopping them shenanigans. Love getting into shenanigans. All up in them shenanigans. 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 Shenanigans.
Welcome to the Comic Shenanigans podcast. I'm your host, Adam Chapman. This is episode 1094. It's our Book of the Month Club spotlight on Thunderbolts 1 to 4. I'm your host, Adam Chapman, and this is a really exciting one. We're talking about Thunderbolts. This is the month that the Thunderbolts movie came out, although by the time we are actually talking about this has been like 4 weeks since the movie came out. But to be honest, the Thunderbolts movie had nothing to do with these characters anyway. So we're going to go way back to 1997. So we're going back a ways, and we're talking about the original Thunderbolts comic by Kurt Busiek and Mark Bagley. I am your host, Adam Chapman, joined by two guests. I got Nathan Struck and Paul Skorez on the line, although they're enjoying looking at action figures while I'm doing this intro. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi. Adam, you don't understand. They dropped Marvel vs. Capcom designed Marvel Legends today. It's a big deal, okay?
This is true.
For action figure lovers, you guys like paper form, and that's fine. We love all the forms that Marvel takes. So
look, it's America's ass. You can see it right there.
It's America's ass.
I love when they can give Cap. They can put his shield on his back. Like that's just should be integral. You should always be able to clip it to his back, and not all the figures have been able to do it. And I'd love to see that.
Yeah, actually, I get behind that. I think I agree with that completely.
Is that a pun? What are you doing? Butt joke from before? What's happening?
It was a very unintentional, unfortunate one.
It's kind of hilarious. It's pretty good.
So talking about Thunderbolts. So Nate, I'm going to start with you. When did you first read the Thunderbolts comic, and when did you first read these issues?
When did I first read a Thunderbolts? Did I pick up issue 1? I don't think so. I think I picked up like issue 10. Possibly, or even something, maybe even like 11 or 12. And I have a faint memory of having to go back, and it wasn't hard to collect them. Sometimes you jump on too late, and the issue 1 is like really hard to find. But I have a faint memory of going back and filling in the gaps. But I actually don't have a very strong memory of my first issue. I remember, for me, my enjoyment of the series really takes off after issue 12, which is not part of our discussion today. But the cover of issue 1 stands out quite a bit to me. You know what? I must have seen the cover in the solicits, right, when they were doing like the new books that were coming out in the Marvel Universe, and it must have intrigued me. But this is post Onslaught, so I was really just focusing on Spider-Man and X-Men, and I came to these guys later, and then started. Even like the Hulk issue we're going to talk about. I went back and found it. I was interested enough that I was finding some of these ancillary or related titles. So that's kind of how I came to it. And yeah.
So when did you stop reading it?
When it became a terrible book with when Nicieza was off, right? When it became like Fight Club.
Okay. So you were on right to issue 75. Like it was double shipping from I think 57 to 75 or something like that. It was coming out twice a month. You were still on board.
Yeah, I was concerned when Busiek was leaving, and then I felt the book in many ways got better under Nicieza, and I was hooked until he went away, until he left, was fired.
So I'm much a later adopter than you. I don't think I started reading it till like the third or fourth year. I quickly went back and found a lot of back issues at B&B and that kind of stuff. But I think maybe my first issue was actually 45. Which was a Maximum Security tie-in, because I was buying all the Maximum Security tie-ins, and I think
oh my goodness!
I think I went to B&V and bought like a crap load to get caught up from that point. Loved it, and then 50 was like one of my favorite comic books at the time, and I kept going until I think around mid-60s, and I couldn't keep up with the 2 issues a month. I thought that was too much, and I was kind of liking one of the parallel stories more than the other. The art started to change, and I wasn't liking when Zerker left. And I just kind of faded out, and then when it ended, I bought up the issues I was missing, And when they brought it back as Avengers Thunderbolts, like a miniseries 1 to 6, I was there for that. And then with New Thunderbolts, I jumped on with issue 1, and I basically stayed on till, I guess, 109 was the end of the Nicieza run, and then you had the Ellis bolts, and I was on that for a while, and I kept reading, I think, a little bit into whatever was happening during Dark Reign, and then I kind of stopped. And then, then the book became other things, but I realized that for me, Thunderbolts was always the Busiek and Nicieza versions. And those will always be the versions I hold very close and the ones I like to go back and reread. And I have much less interest in pretty much any permutation that came after that. So I'm going to look at Paul now. Paul, between, the three of us, I believe you're more the newer comer to Thunderbolts. I'm curious what you felt or what you thought, or like, were these your first actual Thunderbolts issues? Had you read the Ellis Thunderbolts? Like, what was your first Thunderbolts issue of any kind? And had you ever experienced kind of this version of the team?
So, I always knew about this group, I guess. Whether, I can't remember. I must have saw, because I was into comics at this point, because obviously this is post-Onslaught, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously not super into buying a ton of stuff at the time, because that was still, I wasn't really, didn't have a pull list right now. I was just kind of grabbing scraps where I could find them. So I kind of always knew about the Thunderbolts, but I also never picked it up, really, during its release. And at any point, I guess, in the 90s, my only true Thunderbolts purchase, and I really enjoyed it actually, was the Dark Reign run of the team, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was awesome, that arc. Okay, that group eventually becomes Dark Avengers, right, or something like that?
More or less.
Yeah. So I remember when that came out, I was really hooked on that kind of angle of it all. But yeah, back in the 90s, I never... This is my first kind of ever time really cracking it open. And I always knew what it was all about. It was Zemo and the crew masquerading as the heroes, the basic gist of it. But yeah, that was really all I ever... through hearsay and friends, it's it's fun, it's cool, whatever. But not never till now.
The Thunderbolts 1 is often talked about as one of the last Marvel comics that really surprised people, because it was before the internet had really taken hold and advanced solicitations are as easy to come by, and now they spoil things before the current story is even over. It's just a very different world. But back then, no one knew what the Thunderbolts was. They just knew it was a new book, and it kind of came out, and suddenly word of mouth just caught fire because no one really saw it coming and no one talked about it. If it was today, Marvel would be like, ooh, what's their secret? It'd be all this stuff, right? But they play it so straight in that first issue. It's very straight ahead, super heroics. You really they don't play too much into it. I mean, once you read it again, you can see the subtext, but if you're not looking for it, it's just a straight ahead superhero book.
Yeah.
Kind of bland in some ways, to be honest. It's, because the first issue is more to be like, oh, these are colorful, fun new characters, and then you get the twist, you're like, well, hold on, now I want to see where they go. Then they can delve into their characterization now that you know who they are. So the first issue is a weird balancing act, because it can't give away too much, it can't have you know too much about these characters and how interesting they can be, because then they would blow the surprise. So it's a really weird first issue in a lot of ways. I wish Kurt Busiek would do interviews, because I would just love to ask him, this is such a weird... everything about promoting the Thunderbolts, too. When we're reading these books, Thunderbolts happens, but a couple months earlier is when they first show up in Hulk. Hulk is when... It's 2 months before Thunderbolts 1 comes out, is when people first see who these characters are, and then you have that Tales of the Marvel Universe one-shot that had a lot of different stories, of which the Thunderbolts was one, and then you have Thunderbolts number 1, which is, again, a nice way to kind of seed in, here's a new team, they're showing up everywhere, pick up their new book. It's a really smart marketing play. As I am wont to do, I will tell you first a few things about February 1997, because that's when Thunderbolts 1 came out. I will tell you that also on the newsstand, Just to give you context, you had Heroes Reborn was in full sway. You had Industrial Revolution, which was the first crossover of the Heroes Reborn books in the 6th issue of each of the books, so that was happening. Over on X-Men, they were ramping up to Operation Zero Tolerance. That was going to start in about 2 months. In X-Men, I don't usually talk about X-Men, but it had the very famous Roger Cruz cover of X-Men kind of crouched on the cover on, I think, a white background. It's been used in a lot of different places. That came out this month. You had Untold Tales of Spider-Man number 20, and in Uncanny X-Men 343, you had a Joe Mad Phalanx issue. The top 10 films of February 1997, the Star Wars A New Hope re-release, the special edition, actually came out on this particular month, February 97. You also had Dante's Peak, Absolute Power. Right at the end of the month, you had Empire Strikes Back special edition dropped. You had Vegas Vacation, Jerry Maguire, Fools Rush In, the first Scream movie, The English Patient, and Evita. So that's what people were experiencing at this point. And on the music charts, you had Unbreak My Heart by Toni Braxton and the Spice Girls' Wannabe. So, big month. So that's the context.
Prime 90s.
So, Nate has brought the cover of X-Men 26 to... So I knew you'd know what I was talking about, Nate.
Heck yeah.
So, okay, so we get this first issue, again, as I said, in some ways a little bit bland because they can't really get into the characters. I'm curious, again, Paul, what was your take on how these characters were written and the issue itself? Were you a little bit bored? Were you kind of waiting for them to get to it? Like, what did you think about it?
It's interesting because it's interesting to read when you know where it's going, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like the surprise is not going to hook me, but... I kind of did my best to read it from a perspective of I didn't really know, right? Mm-hmm. I would say, like, in general, because getting through this epic has been a slog, I'll admit. I thought it would capture me more, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I'm saying it's bad, but... I had a hard time really getting into it, right? The art's good, it's Bagley, right? It feels very written of the time, of the 90s, right? It has that kind of storytelling, I felt. I thought it was actually really cool when, I am Citizen V for victory, not 5, Roman numeral, just in case you as a reader can't discern which is which. I thought that was a cool kind of way to let me know what that, V is. Mm-hmm. And stuff like that. Was neat, and then kind of, seeing these characters, pulling off this charade, and having their own, like, internal relationships, and then, having, I'm going to jump all over the place here, and I'm sorry for that, but, moments of, like, the Beetle as Mach 1, and when Spider-Man's involved, wanting to get, trying to find the balance of, I'm still a bad guy at heart, but playing the good guy role, and I'm sure it's, as the stories develop, you'll see more and more of people, you believe that Moonstone and Zemo are in it to win it as the bad guys the whole way through, where the other characters, you could see them turning full circle to the good side and not wanting to, follow through. It's like you see the building blocks of that in the first few issues, I think, in terms of how they start encountering people and saving people and seeing it from the other side, despite it all being this big act that they're trying to pull, but they all believe in what they're trying to do, and they trust Zemo as their leader. I don't know a lot about the Masters of Evil in general prior to them forming this kind of crazy team. And I did really like the start of it was really cool because I almost didn't realize this happens like fresh after Onslaught, right? So Fan 4 Avengers, a lot of the big heroes are gone, so here's this big new team to fill that void. And that's a really cool, it puts a whole different context in my eyes to pick it up for that, because I knew it happened around then, but I didn't know it was really fresh off the presses right afterwards, right? So I thought that was a really, thinking back at a super smart move by Marvel to do something like that, because of all the other shenanigans happening with those characters at the time. But yeah, a bit of a slow thing, because the first two issues do feel slightly repetitive. We get released, we get shown Jolt, Miss Takamaka there very early, and it's like, what is the deal with her? You know, and I still don't know. Even though she's now introduced, I still don't know who these people who captured her and tortured her are really all about, like a Rat Pack or something. I can't remember now. But and then finally, like, she becomes this. Oh, hey, you're cool and you got powers. Let's give you a superhero costume. Join the team. Like, what? None of it makes any sense. But that took a while to finally happen. Yeah, so slow burn. But yeah, that's kind of my first impressions, if you will.
Which I'm curious, like, you know, without having a lot of maybe a prior interaction with a lot of these characters, which characters did you find more interesting, or like, even though at times it was a bit of a slog in terms of the narration and maybe some of the pacing, which characters did you find yourself more invested in or more interested when they were on the page? Because, you know, after 4 issues, some of them have some development, some of them have very little, right? Like, I would say after the first 4 issues, we've gotten very little from Atlas, for example. Like, he's later on, I would say he becomes kind of the heart of the team, but here you don't see a lot of Atlas yet. So they kind of focus on others. So I'm curious who you found to be more of your focal point that you liked kind of reading the series for.
I'm very intrigued with, like, the Songbird Mach 1 romance. You know, I'm invested in that part of the story for sure. You know, I've always liked Songbird, and, like, you know, she strikes me as kind of the one outlier of this kind of group, like, for sure, and not wanting to be the villain in the end. And, you know, learning, like, again, I only know very few things about these characters, only through, you know, trading cards and Overpower and different things that have shown me stuff. So to kind of understand her power set and how that kind of works out and stuff like that. I always thought Mach 1 was a really cool design. So, like, being attracted to Mach 1 as a character, like, one of the best designs, I think, of the group. And I also really like Carla Softman, like the whole Moonstone Meteorite, whatever you want to call her. You know, she's her internal narration, being the psychiatrist, like, you know, breaking down things. I feel like she has, like, a hidden agenda even above and beyond Zemo, maybe coming, who knows, because I haven't read any of it yet. So I think where she takes things, you know, like, obviously we see her way later when she takes over Carol Danvers and Miss Marvel and that Thunderbolts iteration. So, you know, so there's some interest to see how she kind of develops through as a character with this group as well. I would say those 3 characters more so I'm focused on. Yeah. Like, Zemo, like, he's there and he's this, but he seems so boring. I don't know. There's not, at least early on, right? Maybe he gets deeper later, but, like, he's trying to keep it all together, and he wants, you know, like, he's playing his part as, like, this kind of faceless leader of the group and wearing the flag and this big patriot. But there's not much meat to the bone for him early on, but those 3 characters, yeah, they work for me. I
always liked how it seems almost too easy, but it does feel earned, that how quickly they get For Freedom's Plaza, they get access to the codes they need pretty quick, like, all these different things happen, and even he's like, it's happening faster than we thought it would, but it's all working. So it was kind of like seeing, because I remember I remember reading comics at the time, like Amazing Spider-Man, where he would swing past For Freedom's Plaza and he'd be like, oh yeah, the Thunderbolts are there now. And I'd be like, what? Who are they? Like, because I wasn't reading the book at the time, and so, like, I liked seeing those types of context. When you talk about how it, you know, does take place right after Onslaught, I'd be hard-pressed to think of how many books really delved into what happened to New York after Onslaught, because I don't know if a lot of books really dealt with the devastation that had happened as a result of Onslaught Marvel Universe. Like, here we actually see the fact that there's still rubble, they're still going through stuff, they're still finding survivors. Like, X-Men didn't worry about that. X-Men kind of moved on and was in different places and wasn't, like, really in the heart of New York. And if you think about it, like, Spider-Man still had the Clone Saga to go through, so, like, he didn't care what was going on, it seemed. Like, they were kind of moving on really quick. So this felt like one of the few places that, which is odd, that this is where you see the actual devastation of Onslaught and nowhere else. Because there was no Avengers book for it to talk about it, no FF book or anything like that. And the other books, street-level books at the time, seemed to steer away from it. Or they weren't even involved. Like, Daredevil never really got involved in Onslaught, so you just never talked about it. So you'd forget that it even happened. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts, Nate, to kind of go back to this? I know you were nodding a little bit when Paul was talking about at times it was a bit of a slog to kind of get through. Did you remember that at times it can be a little bit tough, and, like, 90s comics in general at times can be like this, but did you find this was more of a surprise slog than you thought?
I was flipping back again through the epic, just trying to find an answer to that question you asked earlier about where my entry point is. The two covers and then the interiors I remember the most is issue 8 and 12. So I suspect I got 8 and then I got 12 and then I went backwards. The issue that stands out the most to me before the later issues in the year is issue 4. So that's likely, those are some of the issues I must have read the most, which is also probably likely the ones I had early on. And for me, going back through this now and reading it from start to finish, or at least that's the direction we're going, I agree with Paul that I don't find this series interesting until we get to Jolt. For me, I feel like there's multiple status quo changes in this book through its career, which is one of the things that's nice and fresh about it. Mm-hmm. There's several distinct eras within the classic eras, and what Paul was kind of steering towards, or maybe hoping would be true, that Zemo gets characterization, gets fleshed out, becomes very interesting. Absolutely does happen, but it takes a long time. It's in the Nicieza moment where he really develops that character into something compelling. So if you're here for the Zemo story arc, it's not really going to be anything meaningful in these early issues. The idea that villains are taking over the roles of heroes and now they're like the premier team in New York is like that first kind of status quo thing. And then it really just kind of runs out of gas early on, right? You're like, okay, so like how compelling is that? The drama, there's no real worry, right? There's no real threats, I feel, as I'm reading it. I'm not like, oh, they're one step away from getting the nuclear codes, right? Like next issue they could get them, and then you're like, oh no, I'm sweating here. Like they shouldn't get the nuclear codes. There's none of that. It's like, oh well, the mayor's going to turn over the keys to Four Freedoms Plaza, which first of all they shouldn't be able to do. Like Reed, even dead, would have like so much security. He'd like have it like sucked into a wormhole or something.
Well, actually, speaking of that, there was an issue of Cable that was involved with that. Or actually, no, sorry, it wasn't Four Freedoms, but something happened with Four Freedoms and also with Doom, because Doom was gone, right? So Nathaniel Richards like pillaged a lot of that stuff and took it all away, so that no one can get a hold of it. But so they did reference some of that stuff.
Even what's left though is like really like even Zemo comments. He's like, "Do you have any idea like what they've given us?"
Yeah. They hand wave it, right? Because they're like, "Well, I'm sure Franklin will be okay with us using it." Like they mention it, but it's really hand wavy.
But Busiek doesn't say, by the way, here is a miniature universe that is in a jar, and if we drop it, it could destroy the world. Like, there's no sense of a stake.
No.
And so then when Haley gets in there, am I saying her name right?
Hallie?
It's Hallie. Now you have another status quo change. Now you have, like, this dramatic irony. Now there's a member of the team who's not a member of the team, and they have to put on an act all the time, or at least all the time she's around. Mm-hmm. And that creates drama. I agree with Paul that the romance between Beetle, Mach 1 and Songbird is compelling. That does its own kind of sine curve through the entire series as well, with ups and downs, with they won't theys, which is also fun. So yeah, the characters who are most compelling to me are usually are those two. And I also agree with Paul that like Meteorite or Moonstone is usually a very interesting, compelling character because there's that whole thing of the psychologist, right? Like what her expertise allows her an insight into the human condition that not all of their characters have, and she's playing Zemo, or at least thinks she's playing Zemo, and those are fun. Those are, again, dramatic irony moments where like we know something the characters don't know. So that the issue 4 is where things start to get interesting. But yeah, the Busiek's pacing. I remember really enjoying his Avengers. I remember really enjoying the Thunderbolts. Again, the Nicieza stuff is generally more of a favorite era for me, but I remember liking this a lot more, and this has been really tough to get through. I'm wondering if the teens... One of my favorite eras my favorite era for Busiek is the teens. When they're on the run, I really like that stuff. So I'm now interested to go back and see how I would tolerate that. But I find that this is like repetitive, heavy on narration and exposition for things we've already seen. For things that we are seeing, I really hate it when a writer doesn't trust the artist in a visual medium to tell the story visually. But Bagley is fun to read. He's got great job on eyes. Love his eyes, like very expressive eyes that he draws.
I do feel that you're right. That kind of first status quo shift with after Jolt joins the team does heighten the tension, and I think does do a lot for adding a sense of drama. So it's not just that they have aims and what they want to do, but also are they going to be found out by the person in their midst? In the first 12 issues, I think we get like 2 appearances of Black Widow, and every time she shows up, there's also a sense of tension. The second time, especially in issue 9, because they're really worried that she's going to figure it out. Like, she's going to know better. And so when you have those moments, that I think makes the whole issue more exciting, because there's kind of a, is this the moment, right? And then, to your point, like issue 12, once the heroes come back from Heroes Reborn, now it's like, well, shit, they're going to know fast. So Zemo has to...
Up,
the jig's going to be up, so Zemo has to do it before they can get him. So I do think as that first year goes on, it starts to barrel along and really pick up pace. But you're right, the first few issues are very much like setting things up, and I think maybe the first 3 issues could have been condensed to 2. And again, I think so much of it is that first issue as a reread is rough because we already know the ending. Because once you know the ending, that whole first issue is very, like, the characters are ciphers because they have to be. So I'm trying to come at it more understanding of its limitations as an issue, because he can't give away the farm. Like, everything is on that twist, and the twist is great, but it does make rereading a little harder. Or at least feel more surface and not like you're really getting anything real. Once you move on from there, you get a lot. It's interesting that you love the teens era, because that's not my favorite era. Obviously, my favorite era is once Hawkeye's on the team, like, let's go.
Another great status quo change.
And I think, like, I think really anything from 22 to 50 is this fantastic run of stories where you have a lot of characters getting introduced, the team is going through a lot of changes, and it really builds up to a really big crescendo. But again, you don't know that here with the first 4 issues, and so you're just kind of struggling to figure out who these people are and why you're going to care. And that's why I'm so interested to hear from Paul, and loved hearing his comments, because he doesn't know the Masters of Evil. So he's like, I don't know these guys. So it's been more interesting to see how he maybe would, like, I don't know if we're going to do more Thunderbolts necessarily, but, I would almost say not as homework, Paul, but just in general, if you can slowly make your way at some point, because I do think, like, it does pick up and really becomes this exciting book. It just may not be there yet. Yeah.
I suggest, if I may, that we jump to Hawkeye after this. Like, it's if he feels compelled to go backwards, maybe. But why not get to the good stuff, like, as soon as we can? I love the teen stuff. It's got some weird stuff in there. I like that people. I like that they're on the run. I like that they have no direction. I love that Moonstone is like, I guess I'm the de facto leader, and that's a terrible idea. But they're like, okay. But Hawkeye is the part where things get really interesting, right? Because he's like, I'm going to try to make something of this band of misfits. And also the entire time Moonstone's trying to stab me in the back, right? It's that very much that moment that Paul loves so much from that Wolverine versus Hulk animated movie. Oh, Sabretooth! That kind of like, I'm going to be stabbed at any moment by this woman. I think he would enjoy that. And it's still Bagley, and Bagley really has found his footing. It's interesting because he designs these costumes, as my understanding. I believe he does. Love the big A on Atlas. Yeah. Love the never really a cowl or a domino mask. I'm not going to give you the full cowl. It's a half sock cowl Gambit style, but maybe a domino mask that never finishes. But you don't know who I am. But the costume's still fun. I like it. Meteorite clearly is a pain for him to draw. Right? There's so many lines on it, and issue whatever it is, like 11 or 12. She just like, oh, I'm battle damaged. I can change my costume because I'm an alien thing. Whatever. Pow! Now I have something more sleek and svelte and easier for me to draw and more form fitting. I don't have to worry about weird spikes. So it's just interesting how he plays around, techno again, like a lot of bibs and bobs and a lot of fiddly bits. And he's like, well, what if, sorry, can I talk about a spoiler? Can I do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Gets his neck broke and he's like, okay, I have to download my head, cyborg Superman style into a robot body, which again is sleeker and easier to draw. So, the one character who actually gets the most costume changes really in the series is Mach 1 or Mach 2 or Mach 3 or whatever Mach you call it. Never as good, in my opinion, as the first design.
I agree.
And it also has a lot of fiddly bits to it, but it's just so good. And the colors, and the shoulder pads. I love the big, bulky, kind of bubbly shoulder pads.
He reminds me of a Centurion. Like, that's exactly why I like him so much.
He does, yes.
Yeah.
McLeod. What's his name? The aerial guy. Something McLeod. I had that figure. So, yeah, the art is enjoyable, but he really has changed the costumes by that time in the book. By the time Hawkeye arrives, it's almost like he can draw it faster, right? Like he's just kind of more used to it. And I hope eventually, since Paul already has a love for Songbird, maybe we can read Avengers Forever and really get into the weeds of how much exposition can Busiek give you in a comic. But will the art of Carlos Pacheco be enough to guide us through? But those are my future hopes.
I can tell
Ace
you...
McCloud for the record.
Oh.
What's that?
Ace McCloud for the record.
Ace McCloud. Of course he's an ace.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, Nate, that I think that Paul would drown under the weight of Avengers Forever. Like, the wordage alone and then the continuity homework, I think he would die in the middle.
But I agree. But there is something compelling, though, about that. Like, it has an encyclopedia. It has a reference guide. He cites his sources at the back. So, like, there's, like, checklists, basically. And Paul loves a good checklist of, like, books that are constantly referenced. So there's something about it. It's like reading an encyclopedia if reading an encyclopedia wasn't painful. So, yeah, he would have to be something where he goes, this is going to be my lesson in the history of the Marvel Universe, and I'm going to learn things I would never learn otherwise, and also really good, pretty pictures. And I wonder if that might be enough. It's not. You're right. It can be bounced off, but I've given that book to people who have not been in comics, like really early on, entering into it, and I'm like, no, don't read this. And they're like, well, it looks really good. And at least 2 of the 3 people I've introduced it to have loved it. And
really?
One of them didn't read comics after that. And they're like, no, I love it. I'm like, are you going to read more? He's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, so did it ruin you? He's like, no, I just, that's enough. But, like, he liked it. So, and he wanted to talk about it. And we, like, stayed up late just talking about all the things. And he was asking me all these questions. So, like, I don't know. There are people who should be able to enjoy it. So I would love to. This is not a podcast about Avengers Forever.
It could be.
These are my rose-tinted glasses, right? Like, I have very positive memories of, again, teens and on for Thunderbolts. I don't have it for this era. Going back here, I don't know why I have the epic. I don't am I going to reread this ever? But I'm glad to do it and revisit this anyway.
A question that I have, so, you're reading this by Busiek, and this is a question, I guess, for both of you. So, you see that first issue, and then we have something that chronologically was published first, but in the epic comes second, which is The Incredible Hulk 449, which has the kind of proper introduction for people who didn't know that they were even coming or going to get their own book. I'm curious how you guys felt about Peter David's work on Incredible Hulk 449, which is kind of a fascinating, like, I'm curious how they asked him, like, hey, we have this team coming, but it's actually going to be villains, but you can't show it, but you can know it. Can you add them into your Hulk book? Like, it's such a weird inclusion. Now, again, obviously, Peter David just passed away this past week, so that's, everyone's kind of, the comic industry is definitely mourning Peter David. I'm curious what your thoughts were on this kind of very random issue of Incredible Hulk. Hey, or whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, well, obviously I, again, haven't read a whole ton of Hulk outside of, like, Planet and World War and, like, some of your more modernish type stories. But, again, being introduced, who's one with the staff again? I didn't quite catch or care who she was.
I forget what her name is. Oh, Janice.
Got a mohawk and the staff. So
she's from the future,
Janice.
I believe.
He's a companion. It's just the Doctor Who companion of the month, or the months.
Okay. Like, I mean, yeah, it felt, I don't know, like a really random type of deal, because it's hard to know, like, was it a Hulk story? Was it a Thunderbolt showcase story? There's a rodeo involved. They're breaking a dam. I don't know. Sure. Okay. It seemed like a very by-the-numbers kind of Hulk story at the end of the day. Nothing crazy here, to be honest.
I love the art. Love the Deodat art. Love the chest hair he gives the Hulk. Love the ending. Not this, right? Well, it gets to the ending, but like the whole hands up thing, waiting for you all to get here. Kapow. That's very David-esque. And then the ending, as you keep. I was reading Hulk. I started reading Hulk after Onslaught as well, and this is, I think, one of the reasons this kind of crossover also intrigued me. He collapses here, Paul, and then they start investigating why the Hulk is sick. And they start to find out that, like, because Banner gets separated, right, as you recall, from the Hulk in Onslaught, and then Banner jumps in so they can have their cake and eat it too and have 2 Hulks. So now you have a bannerless Hulk that's just Hulk all the time. And that's wrong, right? He's sick and he needs Banner, and they're like, how do we get Banner back? So this is meaningful for Hulk fans. But Adam's right. Yeah, there's a lot of just like, this is still emblematic of they can't do a whole lot with them yet, and they can't give Peter David like leeway to really develop the characters in any meaningful way. It is a showcase. I enjoy the art, so that's enough for me. And what I'm more compelled by is Hulk. One page from Hulk 450, which I've never read before, with this great, ominous, very philosophical, rhetorical answer from Zemo when asked by one of the soldiers, you've painted yourselves as this town's saviors, but you started the fight. What do you people really want? And this great drawing turns around to the side with that this void of a mask, this empty kind of haunting mask, and says, what does anyone want? And then that's all you get. And it's like, wow, like he seems so compelling and full of mystery here that I can't wait to read more about this Zemo guy, and then you just don't get anything really good after this. He's like, I wish the Avengers were still around so I could kill them.
True.
You don't get the depth of that Zemo until Nisieza comes about.
Well, even at the end of that issue with Peter David, like Moonstone at this point had a history with the Hulk, so I like that there was that. She's like, what about the Hulk? You promised me. My dear meteorite, you have to learn to prioritize, and that's it. So again, he's giving you a little bit. Like Peter David's he knows, but he knows he can't overplay, and obviously editorial knows. So they're giving you just a little bit to play with, but not too much. So again, it's the type of thing that really works on a reread. If you know anything about Moonstone as a character. If you don't, it doesn't add or detract. It's just there. But if you know something, it's like, oh, well, that actually was some interesting subtext.
There's a really quippy line from Techno, who's not really known for a lot of quipping. He's just kind of like, I'm a bad guy because I was with Hydra, and I like technology. But he swings away in the page before that, and he says, back in a few, crew, which now I think should just be his saying. That should be something he should have said every issue. And, of course, we can't have that because we can't retroactively retcon it. So I think, boys, the next time I leave you, I should remember to tell you that I'll be back in a few, crew. And then you'll nod and laugh, and then your partners will go, what is wrong with this guy? Why do you hang out with him?
I like the idea that you think that's the comment that'll make them think that, not other things.
Everything else that's ever happened, yeah, it's true. But I mean, I just like the idea that the reaction to something that's not funny that you two will probably enjoy and have more enjoyment than ever would be not possible with that. But yeah, it's a fine issue, but it's really, I mean, if it wasn't included in this collection, nothing would be lost. Yeah.
No, probably not. And again, that's probably true of probably even more true of the Tales of the Marvel Universe story. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't need to be there. It's just kind of like, again, another showcase for the fact that there's a new book that's about to launch, and so this is done more as a promotional tool, which, again, at least it's by the same creative team, so it still looks nice. It doesn't necessarily need to be there. It's more of them just being straightforward heroes, and just seeing the fact that... But again, it does build up the subtext of, New York needs heroes at this point, and because their heroes are gone, and here's a new team, and even a hardened cabbie can maybe believe that, maybe things will be better. So it builds the world, but it doesn't necessarily have a huge function.
That's the best stuff, the man on the street stuff, because you're right. Without that stuff, it's even harder to believe that they would get the keys to Four Freedoms Plaza as soon as they do. The fact that the mayor is eager for pleasing voters after the wake of this horrible travesty, this disaster with Onslaught, and they've lost their heroes, so there's all these issues that the mayor is dealing with. If the everyman, if a normal person is putting some pressure, or the mayor believes there's some pressure that New Yorkers wants a replacement, yeah, he might be more inclined to go, yeah, okay, we don't know a whole lot about these people. I'm not even going to ask the Citizen V or a Citizen 5 guy, whatever your name is, to demask before I give you. Like, you have to do a background check, and, like, I'll give you the keys to the kingdom, but you have to take your mask off. And the guy's like, son of a Nazi is like, nope, I have a horrible scar face. I'm not going to show you who I am. Like, that would be an interesting demand. Like, how do we make this work? And then Techno can do a whole bunch of things with plastic surgery or, like, holograms and trick them. But there's none of that. But at least it's somewhat believable that they really desperately want things to go back to the way they were. So maybe that's why they get an easy time getting access to, the plaza.
I wish I had this issue. Like, I don't own the actual issue, because I think this is the only story I ever see talked about, and maybe the Kazar story, because maybe it's reprinted in the old Kazar by Mark Waid and Andy Kubert collections, maybe. But I really wish I knew the other stories here, because there's a good creative team that's involved. Maybe this will be one of those things I have to kind of seek out when we're on our travels, because
heck yeah,
the first story is by Wade and Kubert, so that's a Kazar story. You have a Tom DeFalco and Rick Leonardi story. You got obviously the Thunderbolts story by Busiek and Bagley. You got a story by Mark Bernardo and Aaron Lopresti. You got a Howard Mackey story with Klaus Janson doing the art. And then you have a Jamin de Mateus story by Pat Chow. So there's some good stuff in there, but it's just never been collected anywhere except for this one story.
Here's your problem, Adam. You didn't pay attention to the cover. It says right here, in big star, special collector's item issue. So, whenever it says that, that means it's going to be special, and you have to collect it because it's an item. So, I think that was just my fault, too. I really should pay more attention to that. You should always buy it if it says number 1 and special.
Yeah, big money on a wizard.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I guess that was my own folly, then. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen the issue in full?
No, I've never even glanced in issue. Maybe I saw it on the stands, back in the day, but I've never been through it.
Any comments, Paul, about this particular story, or I guess if you had anything further about the Hulk story as well?
No, I'm good.
It's interesting to see when you read some of these issues, and the chronology is in one issue, Abe will kiss Melissa and she freaks out, and then the next time chronologically in this volume she's being all flirty with him, and then in the next issue she's kind of interested in him, but it's just I'm getting a little bit of whiplash from how she's reacting. Partly I guess because I think one of the issues was by a different writer. I think, but Spider-Man Team Up number 6. Very curious what you guys thought about this, because again, they're the new hot flavor of the month. You got the Thunderbolts, and now they get to team up with Spider-Man, which, he had just relaunched this new book. This is issue 7. I think the first issue had Gen X, or maybe they're in the next issue as well, issue 8. So I'm curious what you thought about this Spider-Man team up with the Thunderbolts. Was it worthwhile reading? Did you enjoy reading it? Did it advance the story for either character? What are your thoughts, Paul?
This was better than the Hulk issue, I'll give it that. Kind of very similar in a sense of almost a very typical Spider-Man story, I suppose. This poor security guard is crushed by a bookcase by this intruder, and then it's on the news front page, and Peter's this really cooks my goose, me being framed again for something I didn't do. I wasn't in town. He's all frustrated, and he's got to go clear his name again. So, oh my God. So he swings about and encounters the Thunderbolts.
He swings about.
So he does, right? In the cartoon, he gets that endless kind of loop, right? And then, I don't know, I've never heard of the Enclave before, so that was kind of a new thing. I've heard of these, weird science nerds making these super adaptoid android things that are framing, Peter at this point. With the big heist, they're going to have it for Freedoms, which is now the Thunderbolts base, and then you have the weird kind of creeping on the rooftops by Atlas here, and they got to cover up really quick these girls sun-tanning up top. I love this was still the era of stogies, right? So Jonah at one point still puffing away. Mm-hmm. I don't see that much too often, but yeah, I guess again a pretty simplified story. It's very much a Spider-Man story, guest starring the Thunderbolts, right? You have kind of this thing going on. You're continually push the agenda of these new characters. You are, this is where, you kind of have Mach 1 kind of reverting to the Beetle type stuff, because, behind the mask, oh, it's Spider-Man, I want to get this guy because he's my nemesis, right? But, classic, Peter, Robbie, Jonah of that time type of scenarios on that end of it. So there's no real advancement on the Spider-Man side, but it is a good kind of entry point to continue to pump the tires. And then the typical superhero, let's fight against each other, then we're going to quasi-team up and work together and beat, the Enclave in the end. And then, Peter's kind of like, I'm kind of not sure, but I think, not quite as untrustworthy. He obviously, he's more gullible to trust him than Natasha will be, I guess, later on. But ultimately, like, yeah, you guys are good in my books, cool, good team up, see you next time. And that's kind of where it goes. And then there's a bit more subtext in the background, when we're Beetle at the end here talking to Moonstone, almost kind of like a session with her, trying to kind of find that ability to kind of play this role, but still and resist his impulses to be that villain, and keep up the charade.
Yeah, I really like that last moment, and I think that's what saves the issue, is that this through line of it's really about what Beetle's going through and his transformation into truly being Mach 1, and that maybe, as he mentions, like maybe this hero thing is kind of contagious, because he'd never really tried it before, and now he's seeing it from a different angle, and even the idea like he gave the disc to Spider-Man because it was the right thing to do, and he comes up with this great explanation for Zemo as to why he did it, but that was bullshit. Like, really, he just thought this was the right thing to do, and this is a weird feeling for him that he's not used to it. So I think that's what makes the issue work. Also, I think it's obviously beneficial that Kurt Busiek wrote it, which definitely helps, because as much as it's a Spider-Man book, you have the guy who's directing the main adventures of the Thunderbolts writing it, so actual things can happen that kind of move their plots along. What blew me away, and I was just double checking to be sure, this is the 7th issue, and I guess this appears to be true of every issue, which I did not expect for a book at this time. It's 38 fucking pages. Like, this is fucking long. Like, this is not...
It was a haul, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, when I started reading, I'm like, okay, and I'm like, is it going to end? like, how many more pages is this? And this is... I'm just more shocked and surprised. I'm not saying it's bad. I did not expect a team-up issue at this period of time to be that long. I expected it to be, your regular 20, 22 pages. It's almost double length. And when I look at Marvel Unlimited, they do have issues 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on there. And it looks like every single one is really long. Like, some of them, there's a team-up with Gambit and Howard the Duck, and it's 54 pages long.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
54?
Well, that's including the cover, so I guess it's 53, but that's pretty long.
Wow.
Right? Like, and I wasn't ready for that. So I liked the issue, but it definitely felt like extra padded for whatever length that they were trying to go for. It did not feel like it was like a long story that he made work in this format. It felt like a short story that he had to elongate for what the book required. And so I did think that took me out of it a little bit, that it felt extra padded, because I don't think there was enough beef here for 38 pages. I don't know if you feel the same, Nate?
No, I mean, the only thing worthwhile about the issue for me is the last page. There's heroes talking on a rooftop, great purple kind of mauve background in the starscape, love that. Man, I gotta get a rooftop, like, whatever penthouse thing, and then cosplay and just stand around and talk about my city. But yeah, it's a character moment for Abe. For me in my collection here, it goes issue 2, then this, then issue 3. And so issue 2 is where he kisses Melissa, and they're developing that kind of relationship. And then issue 3 has a time jump, right? Where a few weeks later, because it's also fun that in issue 3, Abe is doing a superhero thing, stopping a bank, some kind of heist or whatever, and then he steals the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's another accomplice that got away.
Yeah, that's fun, though. That's kind of more of what, like, you will get with the Ellis stuff later in Thunderbolts, where they're just bad guys, and they've been sanctioned by whatever, the system, and they're just going to do bad stuff. And it's interesting that there's just not enough of that. Like, a lot of these issues are kind of boring, or they just kind of reiterate the same thing. There was so much room to play in the sandbox, and the arc for Abe and the way it's collected here is just kind of difficult, right? Because you're like, okay, so he's romancing with Melissa, and sometimes because of these time jumps, Adam's like, yeah, but sometimes Melissa's like never met him, right? Like, it's almost like she doesn't, right? And then so that's disrupted. And then Abe's his heel turns when you turn to a heel.
Yeah.
He's becoming a face now. He's turning to a face. He's also, right, it's the timing's off. I feel like he should be bad for a little while longer, then can develop the hero, the Rom Space Knight kiss or touch, whatever the Rogue does, so that she learns what a hero is. That'd be nice to see that develop a little bit over time. But that is a compelling thing, of course, about Melissa and Abe. That, like, not only are they together, but also they're kind of codependent, and so it's not a great relationship, but you're learning that. That not all relationships need to be, like, forever. But that Melissa, like, mostly is, like, was alone and abandoned in her life and abused, and she's only a criminal because it's like, there's someone is paying attention to me. Which comes up later, right? Like, you want us to leave you alone? She's like, no, I don't want to be alone. Okay, I'll be a master of evil. And then Abe is like, oh, I didn't know you could feel this way. Like, I'm just experiencing another kind of life. And all the while, Carla is watching, going, look, this is concerning, right? We can't really control... she's like, I can control Melissa enough because I can manipulate her. But if Abe's going to go this way, too, now we have too many wild cards. On the team, so that this is the beginning of things getting interesting. But in this particular issue, it's really the only thing of consequence to me is that last page.
It's interesting from a chronology perspective. It almost feels like you should be. It takes place like issue 3, everything but the last 2 pages. Then go read Spider-Man Team Up, and then come back, because really the end of number 3 is kind of not connected to anything else in the issue, right? It just they come home and Hallie's there, and they're like, "Who are you?" And that's it, right? Like, but it's not really connected to the brunt of the issue. It's definitely not connected to the how honestly creepy in a good way Black Widow comes off, which is interesting because she's very much in her straightforward superhero phase right here, but at the same time, like, she seems so intimidating. The fact that you never see her, like, you don't see her face at the very end, you just see that she's looking at them, but there's shadows all over her face. Like, they make her almost like a villain for them. Like, she's the intimidating one, and they're kind of like, what the hell did we do about Black Widow? Which is, again, interesting because a few years later, they bring her back into being like a spy. But that's not... It's just interesting because this is superhero Natasha, which we haven't really seen since, right? Like, once she goes back to being a spy, I would argue we haven't seen this Natasha since 97.
Yeah, she's an anti-hero, morally ambiguous. Issue 3 is the first good issue. I'm just going to say it. Like, there's so much going on here. Abe is up to shenanigans at the beginning, and then he gets reamed out by Zemo, and it's like, you idiot. Get a beautiful shot of Four Freedoms Plaza being morphed into the Thunderbolts Tower. Great design, by the way, Bagley. And then, you have Romanov just rolling the Masters. It's her against all of them, and she's pantsing them, and she's fine. And then the Thunderbolts come and screw it up, and then they get their butts handed to them. And she's like, you guys are idiots, and it's first-timers. Like, they're all blinded by Crimson Cowl's move. She's got nothing. She's like, she's fine. She's like, why were you looking at her? Like, she's showing how much of a vet she is. And then it's fun, because Zemo, this is good villain stuff. This is what I want to see. It's like, well, at the very least, we should screw over these other Masters. This is not what heroes do. Let's blow up the pier. So then just, like, I love how it's not, like, Zemo sucks at this, right? Like, it's not surreptitious. It's not like a spy game. They don't, like, destroy the bottom of the pier, and that's it, and it sinks. Friggin' Atlas grows to the size of, like, the Statue of Liberty and starts smashing it. Like, bro, I know there's no cell phones to record this, but anybody could be noticing that. Like, this is not subtle. And Zemo the whole time is also, he's just a little baby. He's like, oh, there's another Masters of Evil leader? I'll show you who the leader is. And he interacts with Crimson Cowl. He's all like, well, you aren't good enough to be the leader of the Masters. That is only reserved for the ones before you. Like, bro, you're totally telling her that you're, like, Zemo. Like, who else could you be? Like, he's such a little kid about it. He's like a temper tantrum every time. Like, I'll show you that the only one that has the merit to be a Master of Evil is... He's like, don't say me. Don't say me. So he's like, he's so crappy at this. But it's just a lot of fun going on here on every page. Like, you don't get bored, or at least not as much. And then you have a cool techno doing a big techno gun thing. He's like, I've got a lot of guns. So that last page, though, or second last page, or I guess this is the third last page, of Natasha just staring at them and leaving. Very atmospheric. Good job, Bagley. And then it has a little uh-oh moment at the end. We love an uh-oh moment in a Thunderbolts.
Absolutely.
First good issue.
I would say issue 4, when you have the Thunderjet, I just like Bagley's design. Like, it just looks cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool.
Like, it's not overly complicated. It just looks neat. And again,
It's cooler. It's cooler than the Quinjet, but not as cool as the Black.
Yeah. And like, when you have that kind
It
of...
makes more sense in the V-Wing. I'm assuming magnetic boots of some kind, so there's no way you're standing on that thing flying around.
I like how they
nothing.
abandoned that pretty early on. They're like, this is not going to work. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger, like it's just him. And then, like, I think Atlas is on it. What are you doing? Yeah.
I think you catch the little fun reference on the first page of issue 4 here, Nate.
Which one? More than meets the eye? Oh,
Yes. Yeah.
To the Scottish philosopher David Hume, no doubt. That must be the reference.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, maybe something
No.
else. Maybe something else.
No. Like the popular children's toys from a few years ago.
Oh, G.I. Joe.
There
Okay.
more
Oh, Masters of
MBTI.
Evil. I get it. Masters
Yes.
of the Universe. That's what we're talking about.
That's the reference for sure. But yeah, it's cool because like the subtext in orange here. This is all Carla's point of view in this issue. That's why this issue was super strong from that sense, right?
She's one of the only compelling characters so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess, actually, to that point, I guess in the first few issues, there was no narrator, right? It was just an omniscient narrator. You didn't have it,
Correct.
So yeah, it definitely adds something by having a perspective that isn't just kind of third-person narration, right?
And hers in particular, because she's the mastermind. She's I'm going to bamboozle the bamboozlers. They think they're tricking, civil society or whatever. They're tricking the mayor, but I'm going to trick the trickster. So that's fun. She's a great choice for a narrator. She should have been maybe the central character from the beginning, honestly.
Maybe. But, I mean...
Or at least the narrative voice.
Yeah. What I was interesting, like, I know we didn't actually talk about this issue, but the annual that comes after, if we just look at the cover for a second, Nate, the way in which it's put together with, you have on the main, I guess, the front cover, you have the Thunderbolts themselves. On the back cover, you have the faces of the Masters. But behind them, you have the kind of the faded out images of old comics that had these characters. So looking at it aesthetically, if you saw this on the shelves, it very much fits in with what would have come out maybe 6 months earlier, which would have been all those Legend books. Iron Man the Legend, Fantastic Four the Legend, they all kind of had the same aesthetic on the cover. So it's interesting how this kind of fits in with that type of aesthetic. It's totally different, obviously, but it's something I remember very clearly. And then looking at this cover, I'm like, oh yeah, this looks just like it.
Yeah, I don't know how that adds to this. Like, I don't know, right? Like, the motifs that go along with, like, classic heroes like Iron Man, and they're like, yeah, this is the non-hero book, but yeah, I guess they're just going for a vibe. But
yeah, I don't know why they're doing it.
I'm in love with it.
I don't know why they're doing it, but it's just an interesting choice that they didn't have to do.
Yeah. So are we jumping to the annual, or do we want to talk about?
We're not talking about the annual because Paul didn't read it, so we're ending at 4 anyway.
Okay, that's fine. 'Cause that's a high note. That's good. I think. Is that good? Paul, did you like this one? Was 4 any good?
No, again, 4 was good because because of the Moonstone kind of narration perspective. Them going to Latveria Doomstadt, and finding Zola there because I guess did Doom get sucked into the onslaught a bit? Is that he's gone, right? So kind of again having that kind of fresh onslaught thing and not remembering exactly who was still around at that point, it was kind of a cool angle too, just to kind of see, not only is Zemo up to no good trying to supplant some hero stuff. Here you've got Zola in the background taking over parts of Latveria and experimenting on stuff and doing his thing. So that was kind of a cool twist to see as well, right? And I guess you finally get. I guess I didn't remember in my kind of opening monologue there, but I guess this Jolt's kind of origin and the people that were torturing her ended up being Zola in the end, right? So that was kind of an interesting kind of payoff to it all, and the kind of the tragic end to her. The children she was trying to protect, they eventually just kind of dissolve themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that we are led to believe at the end?
They dissolve themselves? I thought she zapped them.
I know. Like, you see a tear and it says Shaloop, so I don't know if that meant she zapped them or if they self-destructed. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know they had the power to do that. Like, I guess when she says, "What have I done?" Like, what have you done and what have I done? Yeah, I don't know. I guess they leave it ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, Doom. In Onslaught, right? They make it almost comedic, right? Because he's like, as the heroes sacrifice themselves, Doom abides. And then Iron Man's like, no, you're going to sacrifice yourself. And he like slams his body into him and throws him into the Nexus. And Doom's like, oh. So yeah, he's gone because Jim Lee wants to draw Doom. So they're like, here you go, Jim.
Here you go, Jim.
That's right.
Yeah. So there's some pathos there. Obviously, it's sad that these people are mutated. But yeah, like Jolt is interesting, right? Because she's an ingenue. She's an entry point character, even though after we've entered the series, usually use the entry point character to kind of introduce this world. And so she's also a foil. She's there to kind of like make the masters kind of have to tread a little bit lightly. But in terms of development, it's sad, but only because of like there's a monster in pain. Like I don't really get the relationship he has to them, so there's a little bit of a hollowness there for me. Like there's not much of an arc for Jolt. That I think this is like supposed to be her issue. But other than that, I mean, yeah, that Carla maneuvers things. That's the fun part, though. At the end, right? Carla's like, look, I think I can control all these personalities. I think I can do this, and it will screw over Zemo even more. It'll make him even less in control, and it will allow me to kind of play in the open spaces. And of course, she's always kind of overestimating her abilities, and she introduces too many elements, and it doesn't work out. But that's fun to see her set up her House of Cards with her. So that's maybe, yeah, her narrative, and ultimately what she does here to get Jolt on the team is fun. And they have a little adventure. Maybe not as much going on here as fun for me as issue 3, but still good stuff. Love that now Songbird is using her voice box, her solid sound constructs to make a platform. And Zemo's like, hey, Midra, do you have any trouble carrying all three of us? None whatsoever. I am a super powerful, Hulk-fighting alien woman. I'm good. So that's a nice alternative to have the V-Wing. And I don't know, the team feels a little more congealed at this point. Like they're finding their feet a little bit. So I don't know. It was a fun issue for me. I still remember liking it as a youth, and it was still fun reading it now.
Like, I think in general the series does pick up. Like, and obviously, you know, Nate, to your point, like for you it really takes off in the teens. But as we barrel towards the end of the first year, everything starts to fire on all cylinders. It's unfortunate. This is kind of like the more uncomfortable, kind of awkward stage as you're going through puberty. But the Thunderbolts will get there. But this is just the acne, pimple stage. But we're getting to something that's, more concrete. And again, as Busiek is able to delve more into the characters, as they get closer to their goal being achieved, or at least being closer to what they think is going to be their achievement of the goal, all these pieces will start to pull into place, and then it just kind of rockets towards that the end of the first year. Because the end of the first year is a very exciting multiple issues where, the plan is up, and it's time to kind of see what happens. And then from there, you have this whole other year where, they're just on the run after issue 12, which is, again, what's Nate's favorite.
Well, again, not my favorite. I like the era, but
right.
the Hawkeye I think of is important. So we can talk more about it, I hope. But yeah, if we do continue, I think it's an easy spoiler to give Paul, like what happened. I mean, you kind of did it, right? Like the Avengers come back, Zemo doesn't Zemo, and now we're on the run, right? So
yeah, and that would make sense on how you want to direct this group to go. So again, yeah, it is a slow start. I'm saying, like, technically they didn't even finish the first, trade, like the first, 6 issues type of deal, right? So yeah, obviously you got to give any type of story or book time to breathe and to go. And some books start with a bang and they hook you right away, and other ones, yeah, like it is taking a while to rev up the engine and get this going.
I really think if we had just given you issue 1 through 6 without all the other stuff, I think it would have been much better.
Yeah, maybe. Right? I guess that's the pros and cons of the epics to a certain degree. But
I mean, yeah, I don't think Hulk hurt him though. Like, Hulk didn't hurt him because it was more straightforward, kind of just action issue. It wasn't.
Yeah, but it's also a meh when he could be getting to issue 3 and 4 faster. In my opinion.
Yeah.
Plus, it makes you wait for the smoochy stuff too. We don't even get to like the Abe and Melissa uncomfortable kissing where they're like flying around and Abe's like, "Hey, look at this move," and she's like, "Cool, you're teaching me how to fly. We're maybe forming a relationship." He's like, "I got one more move for you." And she's like, "Blammo!" Like, this is not consent. Like, so it's ick, but they're villains, so I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
That's the spicy stuff that we're waiting for. With like, as Paul says, it's Spider-Man swinging around and the Hulk, you know. And there's a dam, like Paul's saying it all. Like those issues really, I think it makes it slog more than it would otherwise.
Here's the Spider-Man team-up issue. It's 74 pages long, and it's a filler, right? Like, there's nothing here driving much of anything. So, yeah, if they had a meaningful purpose, you'd have more of a thing. So, yeah, it's like we're trying to get to it, and then like, you know, my fear of annuals kicks in. Like, here's another 74-page slog, right?
But the annual's good. Like, the annual adds
and you're
good
probably
stuff.
Right. I'll give it a go.
Once he's hooked, that's something you come back to when he's hooked. I don't think you go, 4 issues, pow. Yeah, let's go back to, like, deep lore. And I know I was just advocating for Adventures Forever.
I was going to say.
It's not a bad issue. I agree with you, Adam. I just don't know that now's the time. I think if you could go 1 through 12 and went, I like that, then you give him the annual, I think.
Yeah, okay. Now, for a long-time fan of Thunderbolts, it's interesting to go back and see how early certain things get seeded, like Dallas Riordan, the Crimson Cowl, and the other Masters of Evil. Like these are going to be very long-running elements of the comic that will not go away to varying degrees. I kind of got over having so many, like the Masters of Evil kept kind of popping up as a foil. I never loved their repeated uses. I love what they do with Dallas Riordan. I thought she was really interesting. I loved how that character and her relationships get developed, which is such a far cry from what we see here. So as a long-term fan, it's really interesting to see how much is seeded so early, and makes me wonder how much of it Busiek had in mind and how much of it was just, him, just cooking along and figuring out new ideas as he went, and kind of doing a Claremont where he just introduces a lot of things and picks up on some of it, and some of it just lets it go. But I do like how petulant Zemo is, as you mentioned, about there being another Masters, because that feels that's completely who that person would be.
It's like, imagine like the new heroes are in town, and the leader of the heroes swings in and goes, "You think you're better than me at being a master of evil?" Like, what? Who is this Joker?
Why does he care?
Unhinged. He's not keeping a lid on it at all. This guy, like, Carla is right to go, like, I should be leading them. This guy is unhinged. Because he is. It's funny. But, so I was worried as I was looking through these, about all the breaks in the narrative. If you keep going, Paul, I recommend at the very least, jump to 5. You can jump the annual, maybe go back later, jump over the -1. They have a fun night on the town, or day on the town, and they're all dressed in their '90s costumes and outfits, and it's stronger. But I'm glad that it's interesting that the movie came out, and they're like, a few weeks ago or whatever, and we're timing this somewhat with that, and that there's so little in common, right? That beside the fact that both of them have a Black Widow in them, there's not a lot of connective tissue here, so. I wonder if Marvel, like, they put these Thunderbolt collections out in advance. Like, we saw them get solicited as epics almost as soon as the Thunderbolts movie was announced, right? Yeah. So they pump these out. Really interested to just talk to people who get excited about a movie and go, I want to learn more. And then they go to, Barnes & Noble, they go to, Chapters, and they ask for a Thunderbolts. Imagine getting handed this, right? It would be disjointing.
Be very confusing. So, Paul, in the second Epic collection that you currently have in your possession, there is issue 20 would be also a fun spot for us to start if you just want to see the Hawkeye era that we're talking about. On the cover of it, again has the Masters of Evil fighting the Thunderbolts, so you'll feel very much at home with what you just read, even though you're like 17 issues ahead.
Is this all they do? They just every issue.
It definitely feels that way if you just look at those 2 issues. But if you do want to give that a shot, like, it's a really good solid start for what that book becomes, and that's it has a great reveal of Hawkeye, which I know that you've made fun of me because I could have bought it years ago for $1,000, and I just did not have the capital at the time, and it definitely should have probably been something I bought. But combining both Hawkeye and Thunderbolts in one beautiful splash by Bagley, but I did not. But you'll get to that at the end of, I believe it's at the end of issue 20. So that would be a good place for if you do want to experience the era we're talking about, where it really kind of starts picking up more. That might be something you want to try out.
Fair enough.
Unless, because when you first read it, you're going to be like, Dreadnought? I don't care about Dreadnought. Don't worry, you care about Dreadnought. Don't worry, it'll be all right. Everything will be revealed. Any final thoughts about Thunderbolts? Or Thunderbolts issues 1 to 4 and a bunch of other filler we read?
I'm happy to be able to do this and go back to it, and looking forward to maybe reading more with you guys and getting into the stuff that I remember most fondly. And then maybe we can bounce back and forth. Maybe as a palate cleanser, Paul just needs like the Ellis. We'll just reread the Ellis stuff again. Look at that beautiful. Look at those giant legs on Clint. I love Bagley, but sometimes the proportions, I don't know. Those Cavalier boots alone are just huge. So Adam spoiled the Dreadnought thing. He's like, you care about Dreadnought.
I didn't say anything about Dreadnought.
He's holding the Dreadnought costume.
It was pretty small.
Okay, well, that's not how Clint sees it.
I don't know if Paul could have told me what Dreadnought looked like.
But that's good, though. I think it's good that you did that, because now Paul's like, okay, now I can work up to that. Because on its own, just saying you care about Dreadnought, he's going to go, no. He's going to read one page and go, like, is there 72 pages in this also? I can't get over Paul going, it's Spider-Man just swinging around. I've never heard him so unenthusiastic about Spider-Man. He sounds like a guy who hates comics.
Well, especially considering how much Clone Saga we've read, which is just swinging around, being upset about the I'm not a man.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And he never said that for those issues, but this is the one that broke him.
Yeah.
Like you say, they cooked his goose?
Or they cooked my goose.
They did cook his
Bring
goose.
me again.
You're channeling your inner, Montgomery Burns there.
Yeah.
So we can confirm this off podcast, but in general, next month, so at the end of June, I'm hoping that our Book of the Month Club will be something Superman related, because Superman will be coming out a week or two later. I know we've bandied about some options from Birthright to All-Star to all sorts of stuff. I know you hate All-Star, but All-Star has a connection with this movie, and Gunn was definitely inspired by it. I don't know why you hate... I understand you don't like Morrison, but like this is probably my favorite...
Even the chunky monkey art in that book.
He doesn't like Quietly either.
I didn't either until Superman. I don't like him on X-Men. I'll read his Superman.
He doesn't like the colorist or the letterer. He doesn't like any of it.
All bad. No, give me Papa Friend Super Energy Man. We'll read that. Go.
Yo, energy,
Yes, people are like, I really want to listen to a podcast about a Superman story in preparation for this movie. Superman Blue, please.
Yeah. Hey,
Adam, you never give the...
We just said it. Thunderbolts, Marvel 616, I think it was MCU, right? I think, but to be fair to that Thunderbolts, I think that Thunderbolts worked for the MCU, right? What they were trying to do with it, and how they kind of vibed it up with, here's a bunch of villains, and you had, it was more of a Dark Reign era type of thing, but I was down with it. It worked.
Yeah. And then...
So sometimes people don't know... I should rephrase myself. People think they want something, but you give them what they need on this podcast. So they think they wanted a connection to the movie, the Thunderbolts movie, but you gave them what they needed. So maybe we can do the same thing with Superman. We'll see what happens.
And what they really needed was to hear us completely break Paul when it came to Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Oh, so sad.
That never needed to happen.
And then the month after, in July, we'll tackle some FF book of some kind. Which that one I'm very interested as to what Fantastic Four we should read. That either, nothing's really connected to that version of the movie, so I'm curious, because how much FF have you really read, Paul?
Wow, good question. Marvel Knights, Fantastic Four.
Whew.
To keep things on theme by going complete out of left field, we should read all new, all different, right? The reassembled team, like the Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, Hulk.
Yeah, right.
That's what we should read. Paul's always wanted to read that.
Yeah,
and it
true.
would have nothing to do with the movie.
Right, that's true.
But it would be called Fantastic Four. So.
Right.
Yeah?
And when Ultimate Fantastic Four started, I was all in on that for a long time.
That was good. Yeah.
I enjoyed that kind of take on it. 'Cause, again, Fan 4 being as vintage as it was, like, and the Ultimate Universe was firing on all cylinders at the time. Like, it was a really cool way to kind of read and enjoy those characters in that universe. I read a little bit of Hickman stuff. And there have been a few things here and there, like Zdarsky's like 2-in-1, stuff like that. You know. But yeah, not a whole whack of Fan 4 in my repertoire either, right? So you always have tons of different corners of the Marvel Universe you can introduce me to, Adam. There's definitely no shortage, right? Most of my life's been spent extra spider related, so going elsewhere every now and again. And obviously, big events always draw things in. Sometimes I splinter off from there, but or my love of Thor, which just came out of nowhere through the Marvel Now era, right? Like, I guess these things kind of just come out of nowhere sometimes. And even Doctor Strange, hopping in on that when Jason Aaron had his run there as well, and kind of expanding horizons to a certain extent.
I am thinking about maybe exposing you to FF 48 to 50, only because it's Galactus' first appearance and Silver Surfer, and I'd be fascinated to hear what you thought of 60s Marvel. Because it's a trip. Like that first issue that even introduces Silver Surfer, it's actually the climax of a different story. And then, like, in the middle, they then bring in Silver Surfer and like Galactus is coming, and you're like, wait, what? Like, we're finishing that story. It's a lot of bang for your buck, and it's definitely not 38 pages of fluff, but I'm really I'm thinking that might be something I try and position to you guys, just because it's not.
Does it read very similar to the OG Clone Saga with Mysterio running across a rooftop double punching people?
Actually, yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of that. I mean, there's some stuff that goes on.
If by double punching you mean Reed never wastes an opportunity to slam Sue about being a woman and go get him a sandwich, then yeah, maybe. But, I mean, it is a sort of celebrated era for a reason. It's very creative. I mean, issue 2 of Fantastic Four is one of my favorite comics, which is weird for me to say. It would be weird for me to hear myself saying years past. It's the Skrulls. Mm-hmm. And they are all weird, and, like, Kirby draws them like frog-like creatures, and they're, like, particularly strange. And then that's, like, the inspiration for, or, like, the prequel, as it were, to Skrull Kill Crew, right? Mm-hmm. Like, sorry, Morrison wrote that. With Millar, how, like, at the end, they just, like, reads, like, I don't know, how do we stop these shape-shifting aliens from, like, taking over the world? We can't kill them, and we can't send them into space. Let's mesmerize them, let's, like, mind control them, hypnotize them into thinking they're cows. And they just shape-shift into cows, and they just leave them. This ignoble existence as, like, cows. And then, of course, the joke is they get butchered and turned into beef, and then people eat them, and they get crazy cow disease, mad cow disease, being Skrulls. Like, that's a fun sequel to that. But, like, the issue itself is just fun and zany. So I have not read those issues. So I'm down for it if Paul's down for it.
Okay, excellent. Well, the next 2 months are going to be interesting with movie-related tie-ins, and then maybe we'll get back to some clones in August. We'll see. Wow. And by the time we get back,
swinging around.
Yeah, well, by the time we get back there, Paul will just be jonesing for some Ben Reilly action after all these other weird tangents we've taken.
All these side quests, yeah.
I just want some swinging around, I'll say fine.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for listening to the Comic Shenanigans podcast. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. You can also email us at comicshenanigans@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe to the show. Upcoming episodes will include a previously thought-lost interview with David Pepose. We have an interview with Ron Friends coming up. We're going to have another creator spotlight coming up in the next month. And then we're also going to have an interview with a Toronto-born cartoonist who now lives in France, who's going to be coming on the show to talk about his upcoming graphic novel. So some good stuff coming up. So thanks for listening to the show, and we will catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Just like lightning.